Hello everybody, welcome to another episode of Sunday Night Live with me, Jonny Lipsham, and for some reason my camera it's got all the contrast settings wrong. I don't know why, but I know a way to fix that, so I'm going to fix that and then we'll start. Let me see, there we go, that should do it. I just need to okay those settings, and there we go. I think we're good. Yeah, it looks good to me. All right, so yes, welcome to another episode of Sunday Night Live with me, Jonny Lipsham, here at jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk, here in the southeast area of Scotland, which of course is the capital of the world, the capital of the solar system, the capital of the galaxy, and the capital of the interstellar neighborhood. I hope everybody has had a great weekend. It's been fabulous for me. I've had a really terrific weekend. Very relaxing, very enjoyable. And lots of fun had by the whole family. It's been a nice family weekend, which is good. Apart from my son, he's not had a great time. He's been sick. But the rest of us have had a great time. So yeah, he's a bit miffed. But he's doing okay. He's actually much better now, and he will be fit for school tomorrow, which is good. But yeah, it's been an interesting week this week. We had, or we would have had the show this week, but I've just had a lot on this week, and yeah, I've just kind of been a little bit run down for the last 10 days or so. But I'm here right now and I feel actually pretty good. Just today, I feel pretty good. So, I think we're kind of moving back into being able to just do regular shows twice a week again, for a good long time, especially as we head into Christmas. And, you know, we're on November 11th and already, rather we are, this side of the pond are on November 11th. You guys over in the United States, you've not got there yet, but you will in a few short hours. But for us here, we are definitely on November 11th, which in the UK is basically Sunday the 10th, is being that it is the nearest Sunday to November 11th. Today is basically Remembrance Sunday. So we hold our act of remembrance on the nearest Sunday to the 11th of November. Why? Because the First World War came to an end on the 11th of November, 1918, at the 11th hour. So basically, it was agreed that the armistice that had been signed would come into effect at 11 a.m. on the 11th of November, 1918. And so ever since that time, we have basically held an act of remembrance on the nearest Sunday to November 11th itself. And then on November 11th, there is always a 2-minute silence at 11 a.m. to remember all who died in that war and also in all subsequent wars and all wars still ongoing in which British forces have been involved or are involved in some way, shape, or form. And so that's kind of what today is all about. I know that in the United States you have a separate date, which is your Veterans Day. But yeah, that's what we do here in the UK and around the British Commonwealth as well. So all the Commonwealth nations would have been involved in a service of remembrance today, and then there will be, like I said, a 2-minute silence throughout the British Commonwealth at 11 a.m. So that's tomorrow. But yeah, so that's kind of been the story of the weekend. Let's go see who is here. So we got Billy Morgan, who is first in the door. Literally as soon as I actually set up the show. Because Billy is Mr. Eager Beaver. And we've got Stephen Wilson here as well. We've got Ron Figura, who is testing. We've got Boris Dancy here as well. We've got Chris Monrachner, who says, I may not be here during the show, but I'll try. Chris, you are a legend, mate. Thank you very much for dropping by. Even if you're not able to watch the whole thing, I hope you're able to catch the replay. Yeah, by all means, if you have something, a question or something that you want to email me, and that goes for everybody, but I'm addressing this to Chris, but anybody, if you have a question regarding Studio One, or you have a question about songwriting that you want to put forward to the songwriting show on Wednesday, for Songwriting Simplified, then the email address, the web address is down the bottom, I should say. JonnyLipshamStudios.co.uk. If you go to that website, at the top, in the menu bar at the top, you'll find a Contact Us button. Click on that. That will take you to the Contact Us form, and then you can email me from there. And just give me the details of which, in the subject, put kind of which show you're talking about. Is it Sunday Night Live, or is it Songwriting Simplified? And then in the body of your email, then just put the details of your question, and then I will look to open the show with that question first. So I like to get email questions in first. So if you guys do email me, those questions are the ones that I will deal with at the start of a show. Just so you know, that's kind of like another really good way in which you can reach out to me if you want to, if you have if you have a burning issue to do Studio One, or a question about songwriting, composing, arranging, music theory, all that stuff that we do on Wednesdays, then please do get that in there. Continuing down the list, we have John Hawk, we have Just Bob, we have Sean Aaron, we have Neil Thompson, who makes an excellent point. He says we now have a schedule. You do. You have Songwriting Simplified on Wednesday, you have Radio Talk Frumpet on Thursday, and you have Johnny Gibe's HST show on Fridays. And then you have Sunday Night Live on Sundays. So there is your live streaming schedule, if you really want to consume all of that stuff and get involved in all of those shows, then there you go. So you got Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 3 days in a row. Then you got Saturday off, and then you get Sunday. So that's kind of like 4 out of 7 days that are covered with live streams for you guys to get involved in. Let's see who else we have. We got the W5 family here, and we got let's see. We got Goat My 5 from Salzburg, and we got Harley Bob, and we've got Cal Drajuziak, and we got Bobby Booth, so we can kind of start now. Yeah, thank you, Neil, for your criticism. I appreciate it. We got Danny Taylor here. We got Rich Cresswell here as well, and we got Lowens, we got Don Oliver, and we got Kingston Dread over in the Caribbean. Kingston, my friend, it has been a while, and I'm glad you are here. Welcome back, my friend. I appreciate you coming by. Let me see what else we have here. We got Old School Funk and Soul here. That's my friend Mark down in the Birmingham area in England. But yes, one thing he does. I mean, this comment got deleted. I kind of understand why it got deleted. But one thing we should make note of is Quincy Jones, who died very recently. Quincy Jones was one of a kind, no question about that. I think I made mention of that before on a previous show, I think, where or was it a Facebook post? I can't remember. But yes, Quincy Jones was one of a kind. A jazz trumpet player playing with Dizzy Gillespie in the 1950s and 60s, but also a great composer and arranger and music producer. He wrote film score music. He was involved in film productions, not just the music aspect of it, but film productions as well. And he was one heck of a talent manager as well. Bringing, great artists to the public's attention. People like Jacob Collier, for example, is a very fine example of an artist that Quincy spotted and then developed. And, pretty much everybody knows Jacob Collier now, and his concerts are legendary already. And, he's young. He's only in his, mid-20s. He's only like 25 or 26. He's not very old at all. And he is a phenomenal talent. And Quincy Jones is largely responsible for developing his young talent and getting him into the public eye from his YouTube channel. So yeah, Quincy Jones was a guy who made a terrific impact upon entertainment as a whole, not just the music business and the music industry. So it is definitely well worth remembering him for his contributions to music production, and to composition and arranging. I mean, a lot of his arrangement techniques that he developed in the 50s and 60s are arranging techniques that are taught in universities all around the world, including universities where I have taught, and I've been involved in teaching arranging. His techniques have been front and center of what I teach. So there we go. That is the legend that was Mr. Quincy Jones. So let's see. Kyle says, now if we could just find someone who knows something about Studio One. Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, is there anyone here? No, it doesn't look like there's anybody here that knows anything about Studio One. Certainly not in this room. No. Yes. So if you have a question about Studio One and the usage thereof and new features that are in Studio One Pro 7, which has been out for just 2 days more than a month, then please do get your questions into the chat and I would be happy to help you deal with them. I remember from Jonny's first show back after a hiatus, which was last Friday. If you weren't there, please go over to his channel, subscribe to his channel if you haven't done so already. And whilst you're there, go check out that live stream, because it was actually very good. One of the things he was trying to do was get his head around the launcher. And you know what Jonny is like? Jonny basically goes, I'm just going to do this in front of everybody and try and figure out how this darn thing works. And so he did that. Yeah, so I thought to myself, maybe, if you guys would like it, then maybe we can actually do a little bit more on the launcher. I do have a video up on my channel already that goes over some of the bare bones basics of the launcher. And there is actually a wealth of videos out there already on launcher. Gregor has done a superb video for that goes through the launcher. And Marcus Huskins has also done a very good one as well. Now, when we did the launch show for Studio One Pro 7, and I have my good friend Rich here because it was my birthday, and I thought it'd be great to have somebody just basically co-host the show with me. We went over the launcher a little bit more in detail there as well. So if you want to check out that show, then you can certainly go through and check out the show archive, which is in the Sunday Night Live playlist, and you can find that video there. And he and I went through a whole slew of some of the features. All right, let's see. Let's go see what we have here. Neil says, just my opinion, in the intro video, showing you randomly talking but not saying anything while the jazz music plays is freaking weird. Everyone's a critic. Well, you're entitled to your own opinion, of course, but there are a slew of videos out there that have a silent track with a music bed in the background for different advertising purposes, and this is just one of them. Basically, that video that you see in the intro, which I can show you just again now, it's an ad. It's basically an ad that is on a loop. It's a 15-second ad. That's all it is. And it deliberately doesn't have any sound because you don't want to hear the same thing being said over and over again. That would just become mind-numbing. So that's why there's no audio on that video. There is audio there, I just have it muted for a very good reason, because you don't want to hear the same thing over and over again at the start of the show. So that's why we do that. And also, that's really old. If I'm looking at it on my second screen just now, I have a different chair now than I had back then. So that was one of the early shows in this house, actually, that is being shown there. But it's basically it's just an ad. That's why there's text on as you look at it on the left hand side, there's text there. It's just an ad. That's all it is. So I'm not quite sure what you're finding weird about it, other than my lips are moving, but there's no words. It's an ad. Okay. Anyway, let's go back over here. So I hope that I've addressed that for you, Neil. Kyle says, I have a coffee mug. Yes, I do. In fact, I have two sat here. I have this one that has tea in it. And I also have another one. Hang on a second. I'm just moving a few things around on my desk. Less than eloquently. But I also have this one, which is a Personas branded mug, which you may have seen around. There's nothing in this at the moment, but it certainly can have tea or coffee in it. And then at the back there, I've got something else which I should show you. I've got one of these. It's a plastic drinks cup. And it does actually have a lid and a straw. I just don't know where they are. But yes, I have one of these. And I also have one of these. I have a Fender branded drinks bottle as well. So, and as if we're not keeping the Fender thing going, which we are, I also have a Fender mug. Now, this is really old. I have had this for like 25 years, probably. They don't make this mug anymore. That mug just sits over there and is just a place where I dump my teaspoon, basically. So there you go. Let's see. Rich Cresswell says, and of course today is Remembrance Sunday. Yes, it is. In the UK, it is Remembrance Sunday here. And he says, thank you to all who served. Absolutely. So if you are an officer or an enlisted person in any of the armed forces, and I'm going to expand it out to United States as well as UK, and if you have served in any capacity in any Army, Navy, or Air Force around the world, we thank you for your service very much so, and for your sacrifice of your time, your body, and your mind, and in some cases, your life as well. So there we go. Okay, Neil. Point taken. Point taken. All right, so if you guys want to do a little bit more of a look at the launcher, I can certainly get a new song open, so we can basically go over launcher from scratch if you guys are up for that. I don't mind that at all. So why don't we do that? So let's go over to the screen here. Let's get the camera on at the top. So what are we looking at here? I'm actually going to move me there just for a minute. And the reason why I'm moving me there, because this is where the launcher button is. And I want to make sure that you guys can see that. All right, so that's how you access the launcher. And I'm going to put me kind of a little bit more tight to the corner for now. And once you've accessed this, this is how the launcher opens up. So if you've never seen it before, this is what it looks like. And you basically, if you open a brand new song and you don't have any tracks, this is what it looks like. There's no cells, there's no rows, there's no nothing, but you do have these scenes across the top. And by default, there are 8 scenes. but you can add more if you need them. So how does this work? Well, you have to back up a little bit in understanding how this works. Studio One is a linear time-based DAW, like most of them are. The difference is that the launcher is essentially not linear. And so if you have any familiarity with something like Ableton Live, for example, Ableton Live is essentially much more non-linear than Studio One is. And they have a launcher there, which they've had for a long time, because essentially Ableton Live was designed as a non-linear live performance tool. It was never really meant to be a DAW recording and mixing and that kind of thing integrated into it. It now has that. It now can do recording and mixing, but it wasn't originally designed for that, which is why it has such a really advanced launcher. So a lot of people for a long time have asked us, could we do something like having a launcher in Studio One? And we said, yes, of course. But we're going to have to do it our way to make it fit with our time-based linear DAW. So that's kind of what we've done. So in order for this to work, you have to have tracks in the arranger view over here. So if I was to just do this with a voice, for example, now that I've created this track, you see that these cells have now appeared. If I were to go to the loops tab of the browser, and if I were to go and get something from, say, souvenirs, loops, let's see what's in here. So why don't we just drag this in here? If I just drop that in this first scene in this cell here, now when I hit play, now that's way too loud. So I can double click this. I can turn this down a wee bit. And then I can close that. Now, I think this tempo is a little bit too fast, so let's slow it down a little bit. Why don't we get some drums in to go with that? Okay, let's start this from the top so that this now goes in sync with everything else. All right, so let's say we like what we've got here, and we like looping this for a while. But let's say we now want to, let's just check this out. Okay, let's just solo up this track here. Okay, so this is our drums. Now, what we can do is we can do, I think it's Alt and drag. And that moves that into scene 2 as well. So we can have a scene 2 with just drums in it, for example. Now, I'm going to move this along a little bit so that we can add a few more scenes. But I'm also going to click on this little button here because this is our playlist. And the cool thing about the playlist is you can trigger whatever you have in your scenes. Another cool thing you can do is you can record a track just normally like you would normally record a track, and then you can drag it and drop it straight into a cell, into a scene if you want. You can record ostensibly for as long as you want. Most of these tend to be 4 or 8 bar loops, but I have tested this. I've recorded 16, and I think I could probably have just kept on going. And the cool thing is that that cell will loop for the full 16 bars, or however many bars it is that you have for your recording. And the other cells in that scene, even if they are 4 or 8 bar loops, they will loop according to their own lengths, their own durations. So how does this work? What's going on in the background to make this happen? Now, when I was double clicking these to open these up, you may have noticed what makes them loop is there is an independent loop zone. Now, this is important to note, because if you record something and you want to tidy up exactly where it starts looping and ends looping, then you can do that by double clicking the cell, and this opens up the audio editor as you'd expect it to do, and you can fade, you can do crossfade, you can change the gain, you can do all of those things that you'd expect to be able to do on an event in the audio editor. And then you can change this. So for example, let's say with this bass, we like this bass, but we maybe want to only use 5 bars of it. So now when I unsolo this and I solo just this bass, it's only going to play. Let's go back to the beginning. It's only going to loop this bit. So now this is a 4 bar loop instead of an 8 bar loop. Similarly, if we double click this guy and we say we only want to use the first 2 bars, we can now adjust that and we can turn that off. So now it's only playing those first 2 chords. Notice how these are all looping at their own independent loops. All right, so this has 2, this has 4, and so on and so forth. So whatever you set these independent loop sections to be is what they'll be. And when you hit play, they will loop independently according to what you've set their independent loop range for. So this is very, very cool. It means you have a lot of flexibility to decide how long each loop should last, even if what you drag into the cell is much longer. So if you decide when you drag in something from Splice or from the loop tab of the browser that this should be, maybe you've got something from Splice and it's 8 bars long, but you only want to use the first 2 bars. Or maybe you decide you want to use the middle 2 bars. Again, you can change that. So let's say we put this out to 6 here, and then we put this to 3. Nope, not the playhead. We want that to start on 3. And I don't quite know what happened there. Okay, this whole event has just shifted. That was not meant to happen. So let's undo that. There we go. Perfect. All right, so Now, notice that put everything out of time a little bit. Well, why is that? Well, let's see. That would be why. It's because it's not exactly even. So let's put that to 5 there. And then what will happen is when we go from the beginning, now this is where it's going to loop, these 2 chords here. All right, so if that's what you want it to do, then that's what it will do. But let's put that back out to 1. And then we'll put that back out to 3. So now it's only doing these first 2 bars. All right, so this gives you an idea of what you can do with individual cells. You can change whether they loop or whether they are one shot. So, for example, all of these are loop, but if you right click the cell, you'll get these options. So you can have it as a one shot, which basically means it doesn't loop. It just plays to its end and stops. Okay. You can also set the launcher mode to trigger, gate, or toggle, and it's on global by default, which basically means trigger. And then you've got quantize, which is global, and it's going to be 8 bars, 4 bars, 2 bars, 1 bar, and then up to 16th notes. But it's defaulted to 1 bar. And then you've got the time stretch options as well, because it might be that you don't want a particular cell or a particular, whether it's the particular track, you want a particular cell to not follow the tempo. You can set this per cell. Very, very cool. So one of the other things you can do is you can actually trigger your scenes from here, from this scene playlist player. And basically this means you can just click on these and then you can set it to trigger, to gate, or to toggle. And then you can bind these scenes to a pad on an Atom SQ or on an Atom or on a keyboard controller or trigger it using your computer keyboard using a particular keyboard shortcut. And then you can trigger these as you want them to be in your performance. It's very, very cool. It's very, very sophisticated. Is this something I'm going to use a lot? Not really. I'm a jazz guy. So this is not something that I'm necessarily going to use a lot of, but I will certainly use this for working out maybe how certain arrangements should be. Cool thing is, if you have an arrangement from these scenes that you like, you can drag and drop these into the song. Let me just undo that because I did that wrong. And now, if I just turn the launcher off, you will notice that everything that was in that scene is now in the arranger view. All right. Now notice it was still looping, but that's because those arrows were not pointing to the track. One thing I should have said, with the launcher, if the arrow is pointing at the tracks are active in the arranger view. If they are pointing at the launcher cells, then the launcher cells are active. Watch this. Notice how these are grayed out. And now they're lit up. Grayed out when the launcher is active, lit up when the track is active. Now watch this for some fun things that you can do. Let's say we want to keep the drum loop as a loop, but we want to use what's in the track here. We can do that. Watch this. Notice though, the cell is continuing, but these guys aren't, because these guys, once you bring them from the launcher into the song, they're not going to loop anymore. All right, they just become standard audio events at that point. So I hope that that was helpful to at least explore how this works a little bit. So you can move anything from the launcher into the arranger view here, or you can record something from the you can record something into your song here, and then you can drag that into a scene and make that a loopable thing in your scene if you want to. So you can send to and from the launcher and the song to the launcher to the song. You can do all of that. You just have to bear in mind, make sure that the arrows are pointing to what you want to be active. So what we just did here was we made sure that this was active so that we had the drum loop, but these were set to active so that we had the tracks playing. So you can play the tracks and the launcher. But if you press the scene button, it immediately makes all of these active. Do you see how the arrows immediately pointed away from the tracks and to the cells instead? So let's put these back that way. And what we're going to do is we're going to start the song, and we'll start this at the same time. All right, and so now I'm going to do drums and bass, and the keyboard is going to be playing from the track, okay? Let's go back to the beginning here, because that kind of didn't trigger the tracks here properly. So as you can see, you can have a mixture of what is playing from the launcher and what is playing from the track. You can do both at the same time. What you need to do is, the first thing you have to do is you have to start the song. And then let's say you want to stop this keyboard sound. All right, so I hope that this helps. There's a lot more that you can go into in depth here, but it would, you know, if I was to cover everything that you can do with the launcher and with the scenes, you know, we would be here all day. But if you right-click the scene, you can change the name of the scene. You can remove the scene. You can add the scene to playlist over here. You can add scene from playing cells. You can do whatever you want. You can, you know, if you really want to, you can drag this back and put this over here into scene 3. So now we've got all of those scenes, and we've got just scene 2 just has just the drums in it. But you can change the name of these. So you can right click these and you could say this is all in, and you can even change the color as well. So you could make that color, and then you could right click this, double click there, and just call that drums only. And you could make this red. And then you could call this, you could right click this, and we could call this all back. All back in, and keep that one blue. And so now notice how not only have the scenes changed name, but they've also changed name in this little playlist. This is very cool. So we can just trigger these just by double clicking on them. All right, so notice actually this all back in, notice how these have cut short. That's because these are no longer looping as they should be. Because the loop, basically it defaults to an 8-bar loop. So that is how you fix that. All right, so I hope that this has helped you guys. You know, I know maybe a little bit more about the launcher than Jonny Guide does, but you know, I'm not necessarily a total expert at it yet. And basically this is just all I know about the launcher has come from testing, just trying things, seeing what it can do, what it can't do, what its limitations are, just by trying things out. And that's how I was able to do my launcher video as part of my Studio One Pro 7 series. So if you want to check that out, please go and check that out. I cover some of the things that I've talked about here in that video, but I've gone over it in a bit more depth here and taken a little bit more time than I did for the video. I wanted to keep that video short, so it was only a few minutes long, whereas this we've gone into for maybe, you know, 30 minutes. So I hope that this has helped. Familiarize yourself with this launcher. Let's see if we got any questions on the launcher, then I'm happy to discuss those. Let's see what we've got. I'm trying to see if anyone... Here we go. Bobby Booth said, is the launcher mostly used for production? It mostly is, you're right. But it can be used for composing as well. So pretty much like we did just there, you can drag and drop things as you want. So if you're recording on the tracks like you normally would do, which is what Jonny was doing on Friday, you can then take a section of that, and then you can put that into a cell and then set that cell to loop. And you can adjust the loop ranges and everything, so you can make it exactly loop exactly as you want. And it can help you develop like ideas for a section of a song. And then if you're really happy with kind of what you've got going on, like certain things being one shot, certain things being loops, then you can certainly, you know, drag and drop that entire scene back into your song if you want to. If that's how you want to craft your arrangement for each of the sections of your song using the arranger track, that's it. You just drag and drop that into the song and it automatically creates the arranger block for you. And then if you want certain things to just continue to repeat, you can do that thing where you drag the bottom right corner of the event, and as you're dragging it, it creates copies of itself, which are shared copies, by the way. Which basically means that if you edit one part of, let's say you've copied it 5 or 6 times. If you edit the third one to make one adjustment, then it affects all of the other copies because they are all ghosted shared copies, basically. So that's one thing to bear in mind when you are using that, dragging procedure to loop something across the whole of a song or across a certain duration of your song. That's what that does. It creates ghost copies, shared copies of the event that you are extending out. So when you edit one, it edits all in the same way. That's great if that's what you want. If that's something you don't want, then once you have dragged everything out, then I suggest you bounce it so that you can then go and make adjustments as you want. Or you can go into the MIDI data and just create a new MIDI part, and then you can have it so that that MIDI section is specific and then all the other ones are different. So you can do those kind of things with that, and it can be tremendously powerful, tremendously useful for building out a song, building out an arrangement of a song. It can be used in performance as well. So if you have a song that you are doing basically a remix of, and you want to do a live remix of the song, and you want to perform that remix, and you want to be able to trigger cells individually as well as scenes individually, which you can do in the launcher, you can create a completely unique live performance of an existing song. So you can take an existing song, drag all the events into the launcher, which will populate cells and populate scenes, and then you can start to do different unique and creative things with that song to create a brand new remix of your song effectively. I think it's enormously powerful as a creative composing, arranging, and songwriting tool. I think it's fantastic. Is it going to be something that I'm always going to use? Not necessarily. I will use it in certain circumstances. Does it really work for straight ahead jazz, which is what I do the most? No, it's not going to be useful for straight ahead jazz. But that's not to say I'm not glad it's there as a feature. I am very glad it's there as a feature because I know there's a lot of people who, they do straight up music production for R&B, for hip hop, and, all of those dance genres and EDM genres. For them, this is great. This means that they can perhaps consider not using Ableton Live and use Studio One to do everything. So they're not having to use Studio One for production, Ableton Live for doing this live launching thing, and then bring that into Studio One. They don't have to do that anymore. We now have an option whereby they can just use just Studio One. So this is the first incarnation of the launcher. I am pretty confident, pretty sure that as we go forward, as with most new features in Studio One, it will be updated. There will be features added to it. People are already making feature requests for things that they think can improve the launcher. And they're doing it over at feedback-software.presonus.com, which is the new feature request place, by the way. So there's feature requests already over there for improvements to the launcher. And I think a lot of those feature requests are really, really good. And I think may get to see the light of day in future builds of Studio One as we go forward. So I think version 7, I think this is probably the most it's the most musical. It's the most musical build of Studio One I think we've ever done. Yes, it does have a bit more of a music production focus to it. There's not so much for mixing engineers or mastering engineers because the project page hasn't been touched and most of the channels haven't really been touched, and there's no new plugins really other than the new instruments that are now available: Lead Architect, Deep Flight 1 Extended, and of course the CV instrument for those that are doing modular Eurorack style hardware synthesis. You can now control those via the CV instrument, which I think is amazing. That's certainly a feature I would never have thought of because I don't have any of that kind of gear. But I think it's great that we've got those things now, and so we've that's kind of been the focus for Studio One 7, in much the same way that in Studio One version 3 the focus really was mixing. So we did a lot of improvements to the channels in Studio One version 3.0, and so one of the big things was basically expanding the undo feature to include things that you do within plugins and within the channels in the mixer as a whole, to make mixing a lot easier and to mean that you don't accidentally, as you're scrolling, accidentally start moving faders. You can actually catch those now in the edit history, and you can undo those moves that you may have accidentally made. So that was added to version 3, and then version 4 had much more of a kind of new. It had a bit of an overhaul, a bit of a facelift, and there was some improvements made in most areas actually. And then we get to version 5, which had a bit more of a songwriting focus, and then version 6, which focused on enhancing the score editor and a few other things, and then we get to version 7, where it's got a much more production-orientated focus. Neil says, regarding my question from last week, I found... Hang on, a notification just popped up for me. I found a Canadian retailer selling an upgrade to version 6 Pro for $5 less than upgrading to version 7 Pro, so I may as well get Pro 7. Yes, I would say so. Now, here's the thing to bear in mind. Because we now have Studio One Pro 7, that's the upgrade path. So if you have version 5 and you want to upgrade, by and largely, the upgrade path now is to go straight to version 7, to Studio One Pro 7. And that's because when there is a new version, the old version is no longer available for sale. So what happens is that most third-party retailers, they'll keep selling product keys for version 6 until they have none left. That's what they tend to do. So if you're still out there and you're still going, not sure I'm quite ready to go to version 7 yet, but I would like to go from an older version to version 6, check out the third-party authorized dealers and retailers and resellers, because they may have some Studio One 6 upgrade product keys left in stock. And if they do, it's entirely likely they may be selling them at a discount. Can't guarantee that, but they may be. Go check those out to be sure. And if they are, then that would be your only path for getting from an older version up to version 6. But then if you want to get version 7, you would then have to upgrade your version 6 to version 7. Because, when we are now outside of the grace period where you might, having purchased version 6, get an upgrade to version 7 for free. That time has now passed. Basically, that time was from August 1st all the way up to the day of launch of Studio One Pro 7. And so that window for being able to get Studio One 7 for free has now closed. But yeah, a $5 discount, that's mental. And it's fun. It is pretty funny as well. All right, so we are pretty much heading towards the general direction of the end of the show. Thank you very much for all of your questions. I'm still kind of looking through the chat, by the way, to see if there is anything there that I've kind of missed. Secret Squirrel says, Happy Remembrance Day to all who served over there in the UK and other regions which celebrate it. Happy Veterans Day tomorrow to all of my fellow brethren tomorrow here stateside. Yes, I will be, just as I have spent today acknowledging our fallen on Remembrance Sunday, which is, like I said, it's always the nearest Sunday to the actual 11th itself. On the 11th itself, there is a nationally observed 2 minute silence because that's the actual day itself. And that tends to, that obviously moves what day it is in the week. Sometimes November 11th does fall on a Sunday. And when it does, then that's great because the act of remembrance falls on the exact same day. So to you guys in the United States who are either veterans or you are still serving in the armed forces in the United States, thank you very much for your service and for, putting your life and your limb and your mind and your mental health and well-being on the line for the rest of us in the world. We appreciate it very much. Gert is here. He's just arrived. We're just wrapping up the show, my dear friend, but thank you for dropping by. I appreciate it. And I would recommend, if you're interested, to catch the replay when the show finishes. So we have 25 people here still watching, and we peaked at 31, but we've only got 22 likes. So your likes would be appreciated very much. Neil says his Commonwealth nation that I live in actually observes Remembrance Day on November 11th every year and not on the nearest Sunday. There you go. So there are, like I said, there are differences. But yeah, so the actual services take place on the nearest Sunday because it's kind of regarded as a service that takes place in a church or in a synagogue or in a mosque. So it'll be on the nearest Sabbath or the nearest Sabbath or the nearest Sunday, whichever is easiest. And then, of course, as I said, on November 11th, there's the national moment of silence at 11 a.m. All right, so Billy has launched an after show Zoom. If you want to carry on the conversation over there, please come and join us. I'll be over there for a wee bit, and then I'll be going to bed because I've had a very, very long day. But thanks a lot for all of your questions and for all of your comments. I appreciate it. And Neil, your comments about the intro slide are noted. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate it. And until Wednesday, we will be back on Wednesday for Songwriting Simplified, where I will be taking your songwriting, composing, arranging, music theory questions then. So between now and then, start thinking about what questions you may have, and then we will cover those on Wednesday. Thank you very much, everybody, and I will see you then. Good night.